I'm Barry Kislowitz, and welcome back to another episode of Leadership Lenses, the podcast designed for heads of school, principals, Rosh Yeshiva, anyone else who wants to improve and enhance Jewish education. We are thrilled to have with us today an old friend and colleague, Miriam Stein of Saddlerock Strategies. And Miriam does admissions, she does team dynamics, she does a wide range of things that help you and your Jewish day school. And actually, I think Miriam helps well beyond Jewish day schools, independent schools, other schools, businesses. Her reach is far and wide. We're going to focus a little bit, but before we get started, first of all, Miriam, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Tell us a couple seconds about what you do when you're not busy being hosted on podcasts.
Oh my gosh. Wow. It is such a thrill to be here. Thank you so much, Barry. We've known each other a long time, and it's a pleasure and also a treat to be on your podcast. What do I do? Gosh, I just want to help people love being at work. We spend the majority of our waking hours at work, so I just want to make it more fun and meaningful. So I spend a lot of my time working on that, but also just reading about leadership development, reading about workplace dynamics. I'm also a mom and a wife, and we have a dog, and I send my kids to Jewish day school. So I'm really involved with that, also involved with our shul. I live in the amazing holy town of Kent Mill in Silver Spring, Maryland. So thank God, part of a really dynamic Jewish community. And it's such a gift to be able to do what I love and get paid to do it. So that's what I
Amazing.
do.
Amazing. And thank you. And again, Miriam does that range of work. We're going to focus in on one aspect of what Miriam does here, which I think can be really fascinating for heads. And that's her work with admissions and enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I was a head, and I know this is true for many of my clients, every time I came to a board meeting, I presented, well, here's our enrollment, here's our projected enrollment for next year. I felt like I was telling them what the Dow Jones did that day. Like this was going to be the indicator of whether you are happy or not happy with the school, because the kind of surface logic went, if we're doing a good job, then more kids will want to come here. And if more kids come here, then we're going to be able to pay our bills and make our budget. So admissions and enrollment is a huge, huge factor that looms in the life of a head of school. And at the same time, my sense is that a lot of us as heads aren't exactly sure what to do with it or how to manage it. Sometimes it's something that happens to us rather than something that we would control. So we'd love to hear from you, like what should a head be doing? So give us the number 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
What should a head be thinking about when they think about admissions? And then we'll just take it with more questions from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think admissions is an interesting piece of the school puzzle because I think very few kids say, I want to grow up to be an admission director. And it is like, it's an often kind of accidental profession, yet it is so essential. And I think a lot of heads, either they come up through the educational path, or they come, they were a Rebbe and, they went to camp and they were an amazing counselor and a division head and a Rebbe and then they end up being a head of school and they're super dynamic and inspiring, but they just don't really know what to do with admission. And yet they're, the board says this is the most important piece of your job and you've never been trained for it. So it's understandable that it's kind of this black hole of school health in many ways. So I think number one, the most important thing to be aware of when it comes to admission is where are we strong and where are holes? Just keeping your eye on the horizon constantly. And I would say it's essential to, maybe this is number 2 or 1A, is to have a regular meeting with your admission director or have the admission director at the leadership team meeting. A lot of times I think people assume admissions just kind of happens, but they don't sit and look at the data and say, what is the data telling us? So when you're presenting those Dow Jones findings to your board, you want to know hey, we're doing really well in 6th grade. What does that tell us? What's happening in the community that people are really interested in our 6th grade? Or where do we need to be on the lookout because we're actually really low in 3rd grade boys? Okay, what's happening and why? So you really want to immerse yourself in the data and understand why. And the way to do that as a head, no one expects you to really know that. I think the way to do that is to have ongoing communication with your admission professional. So I would say that's number 1 is have a communication bridge, whether it's a meeting or a really strong spreadsheet that you both are on all the time. I think the reason just being aware of admission and enrollment is so important is for two reasons. One is obviously you want to fill your classes so you can achieve the mission of your school. And the more students that you have, the more tell medium you have, like the better the chance that you're achieving whatever it is. So you want to have robust enrollment. The second reason it's so important, and the reason the board cares so much about it, is because tuition from enrollment should be the primary financial driver for the school. So the best practice in the independent school world is that at least 85% of your revenue coming into the school should be from tuition revenue. And some schools are at that, many schools are not. So it is important not only to know what the numbers are for like what is our enrollment like, but also how much revenue is coming in, because a full school, two schools that have the same students with the same tuition, same tuition level might not have the same revenue coming in.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
So let me jump in there because I've been taking notes. There's a lot I want to ask and say
Okay.
right now. Let me put two things together to begin with, right? So I'm a head of school and I'm like, okay, I just listened to this podcast. And as I do every time I listen to the podcast, I immediately apply it to my life. And now I know that I need to sit with my admissions director and we need to figure out the data, and they're going to help me understand the data. But then I also heard you say a lot of admissions directors are there by accident. I know I had 3 wonderful admissions directors during my tenure as head of school. None of them had planned to be there, but they did a wonderful job, but they don't necessarily know how to tell me what to do. So like, what do you tell the head of school who now wants to be engaged in admissions, who's sitting with their admissions director who didn't necessarily have any training? How do you begin to work yourself out of that?
Right. The super important job, and it's the blind leading the blind. So first of all, I'm going to say this publicly on this podcast. Anybody who's listening to this, if you're a head of school and you're feeling like I really want to know what to do, please call me. I will be so happy to have like a free of charge one-on-one conversation. If you're new to the field of if you're new to the headship, or even if you've been in a head for a long time and you're finally ready to say, I don't actually know what to do with my admission director, please call me and I'll be so happy to chat with you about this. But I would also say, I think that it's really okay to be open and vulnerable with each other and say, hey, what's most important? What do you need from me? How can I be helpful to you? I think that also something that is really important and would be very helpful for heads is to allow their admission directors, like invest in them as professionals, give them professional development. So that's how I got started actually in this field. So I'm an educator. I used to teach high school Jewish history. I was director of Jewish life. I had the incredible privilege to work at Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School. It's pre-K through 12th grade in Rockville, Maryland, a community day school, unbelievable place. My kids go there. And I was a Jewish history teacher. And my dream was to be a high school principal, actually. That was my dream job. And someone said to me, if you want to do that, you should really get into admission. And I had no idea why. I said, isn't admission just giving tours? Like, I had no idea why. And I ended up getting the job. They said, if you want to be a principal and you really want to know about the school, you should do this job. So I ended up, like, the timing worked for my life. And I applied for the job and I got it. And I learned, oh my God, this is like such an essential position for the vitality of the school. And I participated in Prisma's Atidenu program, which was an unbelievable program of professional development. We got coaching afterwards. I would say invest in ASAP or EMA, which are professional, in the non-Jewish Welt, they're professional development organizations for admission and marketing professionals. And especially because so few people know the professional elements of admission, dedicating a small amount of money from your budget to professional development for admission directors can pay itself back a zillionfold, especially when you're thinking about, and that's how I work, by the way. Like, what I do now is help schools with enrollment strategy. And I say to them all the time, if you get one student out of our work together, this pays for itself so much more than this amount of work together times every single year. It's like a very clear dollars and cents. Yeah.
And by the way, many schools that I work with don't have an admissions director yet. And I say, look, what you're paying that person in salary every year is the equivalent of somewhere between 1 and 3 additional students.
Yeah.
So if you think this person can get you 1 to 3 additional students once, who
Yeah.
will stay in the school, then it's worth the investment. It's such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I think it might be helpful to pull back the curtain a little bit and say, okay, so what are some of those practices? So a couple that I've learned over the time that were super helpful to me, both in my current role and previously as a head, are understanding what market segmentation means
Okay.
and understanding what a smooth pipeline or a non-leaky pipeline means. So
Sure.
can you tell us a little bit about like what do those things mean and what should a head know about them?
Absolutely. Okay, terrific. So I was an accidental admission director also, and I definitely did not know any of the vocabulary when I started. Market segmentation means that different, and you know this, anybody listening, you know this, but we're just going to give you some language to put to it. So it means different people are interested in your school for different reasons. And I used to say this also, like when I was ready to give tours, I would say, okay, I want to be holding in such a like fluent way. Push 1 for the Orthodox family who's really interested in Ivy League education. Push 2 for the tour for the student athlete student. Push 3, like there's different types. It's the same school, but you just have to know what is uniquely interesting to this market of students and how do we then showcase our program to reflect that. So it's important to be able to map out what are the different elements of our school. And I do this, by the way, with schools all the time. This is a workshop that I do. I'll either do it in a work, like I have a great worksheet and we can put it in the show notes if you want at the
For
end.
sure. Absolutely.
It's called the tour worksheet. So what I do is I say, what are like 3 keywords that you would want parents to walk away with after this tour or after learning about our school? Because every school is going to say we have excellent academics, we have a warm community, but like what are the top list 3 keywords you want people to know? And what now list all the spaces of our school. Do we have a gym? We have a cafeteria, we have a hallway, we have classrooms, right? Every school has the same classrooms. And then unless you're SAR who has like the airless classrooms, okay, fine. You can fine. But still, maybe that's a hallmark of who you are. And then say, okay, how does each of our spaces reflect our school values in a way that's important to this family? So, for example, I always say this, it's not, and I learned this actually on Atidenu, and Harry Bloom taught this to me, features versus benefits. When we talk about like every school has the same features, you're going to learn math in every school. You're going to be in a classroom, but not every school has the same benefit of being at that school. So what I would say all the time is like at our school, math is magical. It is kids love math more than any other subject. It is a place where kids really get lit up. They will like walk around and have a real experiential program around math. Here, let me show you a 4th grade classroom where math is taught. And that just feels very different. And I would say that obviously to the like academically inclined family. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting off track. But the point is around market segmentation, you want to know which are the different pockets of the community that are represented in our school and how can we specifically so that they will be excited about our school, whether coming to our school or staying in our school. That
Right.
is like important admission language 101.
Right. And I love that language because it also has such a parallel in the head of school world. Because
Okay.
as a head of school, you should always be thinking about who are we serving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one piece of it is to make sure we're not saying you're something different to everybody. Like you said, we're saying we want to find your interface with the school. And then from a head of school perspective and that leadership, which you should be shared with the admissions director is who are the people we're serving? How many different synagogues, neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
demographic and cultural backgrounds, who are we aiming to serve and how are we keeping an eye on that balance and making sure we're serving the people we intend to serve and we're building the school community that really is fit for purpose in terms of what we are trying to create.
100%.
And that's something, again, that heads sometimes feel like happens to them. And we're saying, no, you actually plan that. You can
Yeah.
plan who you want in your school and then go get them.
That actually, right. And that makes me think of if we could go back to your very first question of like what's 1, 2, and 3 of what a head should do. So in addition to that, like regular meeting, one of the another thing that I think is incredibly valuable is in like March or April to have a series of meetings that are like 90 minutes, 2 hours long between admission and enrollment. And if you want to bring in marketing, you can too, and say, okay, like, how did we do this year? Where do we want to go next year? And like,
Mm-hmm.
what shul do we want to target? What zip code do we want to target? And why? And how are we going to get there? And have a really open, like basic fundamental conversation around where do we want to be? Like, do we need
Right.
to target more, like how does this fit into our strategic plan? And have like a real talkless conversation around that. And our head, I had the privilege of working with an incredible head, Mitch Malkus, really professional, thoughtful, planful. In March, I would get an email from him and his assistant saying, hey, let's set up these 3 90-minute meetings that would be like April, May, and June, where we would do a year in review and also plan for the next year. And that would be our strategy for the following year.
Right. Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, do that. Put in your calendar now, because that reflection is huge. You're reflecting on who you served, who came, who might be leaving. And within that, I want to highlight one piece which has been a pet peeve for me. Once a student's enrolled, we tend to have a lot of data. We put them in our student information system. We know grades, parents, we know lots of things. Hopefully that student information system is also talking to whatever database we use for fundraising, and it should all be synced very nicely. But we somehow often miss data that happens before they're actually enrolled. So from that first inquiry, phone call, text, whatever it is, until enrollment, I found many schools aren't tracking what happens. And that means that they don't necessarily know who dropped off along the way and why.
Yeah.
And that's huge. So I'm curious if you work with schools on that, and like, what do you recommend so that from inquiry to enrollment, your pipeline is smooth and not losing people you don't want to lose?
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely, I'm a big believer in surveys. Also, in addition to meetings, also surveys. So I personally would do this when I was admission director, and I guide schools in doing this all the time. At the end of the admission season, like in the spring or definitely in the fall, once your next year's class is really buttoned up, I would do a retrospective survey and send a survey to all the families who enrolled, all the families who did not enroll, and say, essentially what worked and what didn't work. So just learning from that data. We would ask, like, how helpful were the events? What did you feel like you didn't need to have? Because my gosh, people are working really, really hard to put on all these events and working Sundays and every single Hanukkah fair. Like, did we not really need that? Okay, that
Yeah.
would be good to know. So definitely survey people and find out what works and doesn't work. Number two, I would say the biggest mistake I think admission directors make is giving people time and space. Like, let's just give them time. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Today, like we're right in the Thanksgiving season, and my gosh, like how many emails are you getting about Black Friday and Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday? There's going to be the end of the year gifts. Like when I'm thinking about buying a pair of boots, I get like at least 17 emails about it before I decide to click on it and buy it. And we're not talking about a pair of boots here. Like we're talking about like be aggressive with your families. Be politely aggressive, pleasantly aggressive, but remind them that they should be falling in love with you and why. They don't know your school the way that you do. And if you want to keep a tight pipeline, the pipeline is the students, if you're going through a funnel, this is admission 101. The funnel is, if you can imagine something that looks like a funnel, on the top, the widest point is your prospects, all the families that could be a part of your school, but they haven't contacted you yet. Then you move in a little bit, a smaller number than that are called inquiries, people who've actually inquired. Then you move, a smaller number of that are going to be people who apply, your applicants. Then a smaller number of that will be people who you accept. And then ultimately people who put down deposits and then enroll. That's called the funnel. And the job of the admission director is to move people all the way through that stage. So stay on top of it. Be detail oriented. Don't be shy about contacting people. And I think don't say, and don't ever have a parent ambassador say, let me know if you have any questions. No way. Let me tell you why you should be falling in love with our school. What are you looking for? Oh, you're looking for that? Let me tell you how we serve that need and why you're great for our school. But don't be passive about it. If you really want to get the right kids, whether you're dying for kids or whether you're even at capacity, there's always an opportunity to polish the gem, and make sure that you are, I would say, really proactive about telling people why us, because that'll help
Right.
recruit kids and it'll also help retain kids.
Right. And I'm guessing you would recommend this just because what you said before, but all this stuff we're saying about, okay, you've got to go through the stages of the funnel. We've got to
Yeah.
move you along. We've got to contact you a lot of times to help you do that. It is a funnel, but my admissions director used to say it feels more like pushing a train up a hill than it does shepherding through a funnel sometimes, because it's
Yeah.
hard. People are distracted. but you actually want to have all of that in writing. You want to
Mm.
have some way of keeping data, and whether it's a database, CRM, or
Mm-hmm.
student information system you have that can deal with pre-enrollment,
Mm-hmm.
or even if you create it as just a little spreadsheet that you create yourself, you
Mm-hmm.
know where people are,
Mm-hmm.
you know who you're going after, what their demographics are, and where you want to move them.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a write up for yourself. And this is a great brainstorming opportunity for the head and the admissions director. What are all the good reasons to contact them along the journey? What are all
Mm.
the
I love
school
that.
events we might want to invite them to? What are all the ways we can share things in a natural and, politely aggressive, because we're actually giving you something of value, and we're inviting you to our Hanukkah program and our Purim program and our, parent-child sports morning and our learning event and whatever else we're inviting you to. All of that, we love to just kind of keep it in our heads.
Yeah.
And if we write it down, and I used to have literally, I'm a spreadsheet geek, so I've admitted that here.
Yeah.
I'll admit it
No, I love
again.
it. I love it.
But we would have a spreadsheet that had actually a drop down menu for next step. And in
Love
that
it.
drop down menu, you could see 30 different things that the admissions director or someone else could do with this family. So maybe it's you, admissions, maybe it's head, maybe it's a principal or a teacher, depending on who it is, but it's all right there. And
Mm-hmm.
then number one, it guides you as you're approaching it. And number two, when you're doing the reflecting, the look back, you can see exactly what you did with every family to understand
Mm-hmm.
what might or might not have worked.
I love that. And I think also now with AI, if you had all of that on a spreadsheet, you could easily ask AI to analyze the data and say, where are we missing people? Where are people falling through the cracks? I think
Yeah.
that's a terrific idea. I think another way, by the way, that heads can work with admission directors, and whoever's listening to this, like this is something that I think is really helpful, is it's okay for heads to say, hey, the open house is coming up. What do you want me to say? What language do you want? Like, what language have you been using on the tours, or what are you using in your ads? Like, how can I reinforce that in my comments? Ask the admission director for a couple talking points. That's okay. Also, for VIP families that you really want to get to come to your school, or you really want to show them some love if they're already in your school, it's okay for the admission director to ask the head to reach out to people. I used to do that all the time. You, as the head, can make that offer to them and say, "Is there anyone you'd like me to reach out to?" And I would usually like half write the email. I would say, "Hey, Mitch, this is a family who visited. I think it would go a long way if they heard from you. Here's what you need to know about them. Here's what I might say," and I would like essentially write it, and then he would make it his own and send it. But I think that's a really helpful explanation of partnership where he would never know to contact those people, but it was really
Mm-hmm.
important for them to hear from the head. I don't think the head has to meet every family on a tour. That's something that can be scheduling and like scheduling difficult, and also a real big time commitment for heads or school leaders. If you want to and you love to, goes into hate, but I don't think it's essential. And I think it's also a nice opportunity for like a second date to say, I know you didn't have a chance to meet our head. Would you like to meet them? I'm happy to put you in touch. And that's like, and that'll give families a second angle of hearing from the head. And that's a nice,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. And all of this and this is true about parent ambassadorship, and it's true about all marketing and communications the school does. Marketing and communications isn't like, oh, we want people to think this, so we're going to say it. It's
Mm-hmm.
who are we? Who
Mm-hmm.
do we want to be? This is who the school is, and this is what we're going to project. And so, as a head, I always found it was like a really good kind of litmus test of, if I don't want the visiting family to see this, then
Mm-hmm.
probably I should make sure that's not going on in my school, right? If I've got
Mm-hmm.
one teacher that's lecturing while the kids are bored out of their minds for an hour,
Yep.
then I don't want anybody to tour that room. I need to change that room. That's not who we want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
so for the head and the admissions director, and this goes for the whole advancement team, communications, marketing, development, it's not separate from your educational work. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great lens that helps you refine and understand. We want to show our best selves, and that helps us understand who our best self is and push us to go there.
I love that. Absolutely. I think it would be really neat, although I can't see a way of doing this without being intimidated, but I think it would be really neat for the head to go on a tour with the admission director, like in the summertime, let's say, or another time, but just to get that experience. And it would be a really beautiful model of like trust and openness and vulnerability for the admission director to say, this is how I give a tour. What do you think about it? But if you could
Hmm.
do that, I think that would be really powerful for both sides. You know,
Yeah. And
there's
I would do it both ways.
yeah,
Right. As a head, like I would have been
yeah,
terrified to give a tour to my admissions director,
right.
but go for it. Right. I'll give half the tour. You give half the tour, and we're going to be functioning in a different way. And all this, again, it goes back to the first point you were mentioning, which is that the admissions director, as a member of that advancement team, needs a deep and strong connection to the head. And that connection has to go both ways. It's not just transactional. You're not just
Right.
like, as a head, you're not just making sure that the enrollment director does their job so you get the right kids.
Yeah.
This is your window to the new families coming into your school.
Hmm.
And you have to treat that in a real fundamental relational way that has that kind of impact.
There's a workshop I've done a few times that's called Telling Your School Story and Making Sure It's True. And it goes through
Nice.
all the different pieces of how to make sure the admission office is tied to the academic office to make sure that what the admission team is selling is what's actually happening, and what the academic team is getting is what they're expecting to be getting from the admission office. So as an example, one meeting that I would have, we did this every 2 years. We put it on our calendar for every 2 years in the springtime, like during in service at the end of school. We would have admission and the guidance counselors meet with every department head to say,
Nice.
what should I know about the English curriculum? Like, are we still teaching Lord of the Flies or not? And why? You know, like those kinds of questions are really important and just keeps both sides honest. Another really nice thing that an admission director can do, by the way, and if you're ahead and you're working with a new admission director, suggest this to them because it'll help them be successful, is every year at the fall in service, like at the beginning of the school year, encourage them to go around to each department and say, what's one thing that you would want families to know about how you do what you do? Whether it's athletics or English or Gemara or food service, ask them because it will give you the opportunity to have anecdotes about, like, you know, here's what really happens in the classroom. And it also, again, keeps you honest that the story that you're telling about the school is what's actually happening.
Absolutely. And that is an amazing note to kind of wrap up around how to tell your story and how to make sure it's true. I love that. I would attend that workshop if you tell me the next time you're giving it, because I will
Okay, I
be
won't.
there. But, to me, this really kind of boils down, and we've said a lot, but to boil it down to the three key points that I'm hearing from you is, as a head of school, number one, I need to make sure that I have an open, strong line of communication with my admissions director.
Mhm.
That means a weekly meeting. It means talking openly, honestly, and valuing the input of both. Number two is I need to invest in my admissions director, PD training, understanding that this person is often someone who's highly talented, but there's no undergraduate degree in private school admissions.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
need to get the training at some point. And with that training, number three for me is data, right? Making sure that you're capturing the data from the top of that funnel all the way through, and then analyzing it yourself, analyzing it with AI, dealing with the market segmentation, because that's part of what makes the school who you want it to be. And this has been really, really amazing. Miriam, how can people reach you when they appropriately want some guidance, either take
Yeah.
you up on that free one-on-one or
Yeah. Absolutely.
coaching workshops or anything else that you offer? Tell them how to reach you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And thanks again for having me, Barry. I obviously love admission and could talk about it all day. So please do feel free to be in touch, anybody. I am pretty active on LinkedIn. My name is Miriam Stein, spelled Stein. I post tips there all the time. So feel free to find me there. My website is Saddlerock Strategies. So it's all one word, Saddlerock Strategies. And you can find my contact information there. And also, if you like what you heard here today, or you want to share it with your admission professional, I have an email. I hate to call it a newsletter, but it's like a quick tips email that goes out every other week. It goes out on Monday mornings, and it's called Beyond the Tour. And I have to tell you, I get really positive feedback from it. And the number of people that say, I never read newsletters except for yours is many. And it is tachlis, concrete, actionable tips for people to do. So I encourage you to sign up for that. I don't make any money from it. The only thing is it helps you do what you do with regard to enrollment. And And I'm also on Instagram at Saddlerock Strategies, where I post tips, and that's what I do. So be in touch anytime. Truly, I would be happy to help.
Amazing. Amazing. So I will testify to the newsletter. I got one this morning, Beyond the Tour, and I do look at the tips every time, even though I'm not an admissions director. I
Okay,
know that it's things that I can share with my clients. So I love
awesome.
it. Definitely encourage everyone to sign up. And, as we say every time, you've heard a lot here. We tried to boil it down in the end to a few points. Take one of these points, try it out in your school, meet with your admissions director differently, train them differently, look at your data maybe from a slightly new angle, and then let us know how it goes. And as always, you can reach me, Barry Kislowitz, on LinkedIn, Leadership Lenses on Substack, or always on our website, kislowitzconsulting.com. Thank you, Miriam, and thank you
Thanks so
everyone
much.
for listening.
Sure. Bye bye. Thank you.